Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're excited to launch our very first Food4Rhino plugin called OK5-AI. Today, we're launching version 1 featuring Ollama, and this is just the first release in a long line of releases we plan to roll out by the end of 2025. So please stay tuned for these updates as they will be happening fast. Before getting started with the download and install, it's important to understand the purpose of this plugin, because the purpose for building this plugin was actually to bring agent-based workflows into Rhino Grasshopper's interface. And in the upcoming months, we'll be uploading our entire Grasshopper library of simple AI tools that we call AI primitives. And the idea behind AI primitives comes from 3D modeling primitives, like different cubes or spheres or cones inside of the 3D modeling programs that you might be familiar with. And the idea is that we basically build out these simple blocks so that designers can combine them to create more complex forms. But instead of using shapes, our AI primitives are small, focused, and highly connective AI tools that are meant to be stacked, connected, and combined in order to build more advanced AI systems, all inside of Grasshopper Visual Scripting Interface, in order for users to develop their own types of workflows that we'll develop over time. To get started with this plugin, the first step is to install Llama for Windows, and you can do that by following the link provided. We want to install it for Windows and get the download so that it's up and running before we open Rhino and Grasshopper. So just make sure that it's open inside of the hidden task manager. And once that's done, we can go down to the bottom and we can start to download the actual .gha file, which will be used in order to load it into Rhino Grasshopper. And that's going to show up inside of your downloads folder. And the first step that we want to do here is we want to right click, go into properties, go into unblock, select apply, and OK, which will eliminate some of the issues that you might see later if that step was skipped. So now going into Grasshopper, we can go into File, Special Folders, Component folder. And inside of this folder, we can basically drag and drop the unblocked file, which will load the entire toolbar, which you'll see at the top. After that process is done, you just want to restart Rhino and Grasshopper, and we'll move on to the next steps. Now that we have everything up and running, there's a couple things to note based off of how the plugin has been arranged. The first one is how we start to load content and what files can actually be ingested by the machine that's coming in the later components. How we can start to test the actual Ollama server and to see all of the different constraints, and then how to start to manage the outputs from these that are coming directly from the agents that have been uploaded so far. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to basically load the run script, and I'll upload the bifocals as well so we can see what's going on. And most of these take buttons in order to load them once and then forget about them. So if we hook this up to see if the actual Ollama server is running, we can see that it is checking at the moment and it is successfully launched. And we can also double check this if there are issues with later components by going into PowerShell and actually typing in the curl command, which is the standard curl command for Ollama, which will basically give us a readout that this is working. So the opposite of this, if you want to stop the server, if you are experiencing some issues, we can also go over here with the same button command that we have to disconnect from here. And then we basically run this command in order to stop the server. So now that we have this up and running and we have the server that's proven to be up and running, we can now grab the list component, which can be found inside of the OKLlama dataset component set. And inside of here, we can test whether or test which of the models are loaded using a panel as well. And we see here that we have the Lava, Mistral, DeepSeek, and then two other versions of Ollama that we have currently at our disposal. And this really comes from the pull command. So the reason that we have all of these models is because we can start to pull all of them from Ollama and through their API, and we can basically call them by name in order to download them. The full list of models that we can have at our disposal or pulled from Ollama can be found inside of the Models tab inside of Ollama, where we have DeepSeek, Gamma, and basically all of these at our disposal. And it's important to know that whenever you're uploading them, that we just want to have the first uh, name associated with them. And sometimes there's also a good indication of what you need to write in order to pull them onto your own machine using these different methods of defining them. One of the things that should be noted on the models page whenever you're searching for new models for your applications is to go down all the way to the bottom. And at the bottom, every single model is going to have a license agreement. And just make sure that you're double checking this in order to have the proper model usage for your applications, whether they're going to be public, private, in-house tools, or whatever you find an application for. But make sure that all of the models abide by the license that's provided. So once we have these methods up and running, we can actually start to use this model with the string splitter that's provided. And we can define this by splitting it out of string, which is the colon at this moment. And then we can basically use this as a list item of going from 0 to 4, 0 to 4 in terms of the index, so that we can actually return the model that we want to use with the selected model. So once again, it's kind of like a fancy list item specifically made for this set of plugins that can then go into the actual general agent. So the general agent is one of 4 agents that we have currently at our disposal. Some of them explain text, some of them explain code, and others provide image captioning. And now that we understand which agents are available inside of this library, it's very important to understand how to access them or how to provide information for them. So one of the ways that we can do that is by actually going into a folder on the desktop or anywhere on our machine that's local. And we can basically look inside of the desktop and select any of these different folders. And once that happens, we can also start to grab a file extension. In this case, it's .png, or we can go inside of here in order to grab the text type file. And with the text type file, we can also add another component that reads the text from the file, which is also uploaded here. So we can start to add this into the prompts location or input for the agent. But once we have this, we can see that we have a flower at this specific location if we're using the PNG. And over here, it's basically using the image caption Ollama in order to provide a caption of this image, which is fairly accurate. And there are 2 other ones where we can start to summarize the text. This being a chapter taken from Frankenstein being summarized to the right, and that's the only thing that it does. Or we can start to do things like explain code. And this code basically is a grid that starts from a center point rather than the bottom right corner, which allows for a little bit more flexibility. But the objective of this code is to basically provide pseudocode and also steps that could start to understand how the code is being structured, followed by a summary at the end of what the script actually does. One of the things that we're also interested in terms of this plugin is to create a set of utilities that are useful when dealing with mass content produced by these different agents. And one of those key components is the FIFO. And basically the FIFO is a first in, first out operator where you can set a count to how many messages it keeps track of. And the first message that it produces, as soon as it becomes a list longer than the index 11, it basically drops the first one in order to make room for the new upcoming ones. And we can see this in action without actually running the model by changing the string. And we can start to change the string in between these 2 just to see how we can start to add things to the list. And each time that we move it into a new string territory, we basically get a new entry inside the list. And right now we're on 0.3. And then if we change this again, it basically just adds another piece to the list as 0.4. So with these different combinations of components, it's important to still note that we're going to keep updating how we can start to manage more content, manage more agent relationships inside of this plugin. So please stay tuned for those as we're excited for these new releases in the next couple of months. Thank you, guys.